I'd like to talk to you all about freedom of speech. That's right, we're going back to pretentious video essays on this channel, where we talk about politics for 10 minutes to explain 2 minutes of PD2. Now, I am a First Amendment absolutist, and I will get that bias out of the way here and now. I am a zealot with one thing in my life, and it is freedom of speech. Now, the reason for that is I can't really tell a difference between speech and thought. Thought may be a more pure form of speech, but we have no means currently with our technological advancement to get thought out of head without a medium to push it through, which is speech, either spoken or written. So I don't understand how you can limit speech without inherently limiting thought. However, there's a much more deep and, I'll say, sinister motive for people who are trying to limit speech. And I'm not sure they realize what they're doing, but they are truly, in my opinion, undermining the essence of what progresses society forward when you propose to limit the speech of another individual. I was going to explain this in full for 5 minutes, but you know what? I'm plagiarizing most of this from a Christopher Hitchens speech from, I believe, 2008. And I encourage you to listen to the entire segment, but it is the greatest defense of free speech that has been ever uttered, and I think ever will be. In my opinion, it is truly the greatest thing ever said. So I encourage you to listen to at least this 3-minute clip of Christopher Hitchens explaining the importance of freedom of speech.
Before your minds, I exempt myself from the Speaker's kind offer of protection that was so generously proffered at the opening of this evening. Anyone who wants to say anything abusive about or to me is quite free to do so, and welcome, in fact, at their own risk. And but before they do that, they must have taken, as I'm sure we all should, a short refresher course in the classic texts on this matter, which are John Milton's Areopagitica being the great hill of Athens for discussion and free expression, Thomas Paine's Introduction to the Age of Reason, and I would say John Stuart Mill's essay on liberty, in which it is variously said, I'll be very daring and summarize all three of these great gentlemen of the great tradition of especially English liberty, in one go. What they say is, it's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is the right of everyone in the audience to listen and to hear. And every time you silence somebody, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action because you deny yourself the right to hear something. In other words, your own right to hear and be exposed is as much involved in all these cases as is the right of the other to voice his or her view. Indeed, as John Stuart Mill said, if all in society were agreed on the truth and beauty and value of one proposition, all except one person, it would be most important, in fact, it would become even more important, that that one heretic be heard, because we would still benefit from his perhaps outrageous or appalling view. In more modern times, this has been put, I think, best by a personal heroine of mine, Rosa Luxemburg, who said that the freedom of speech is meaningless unless it means the freedom of the person who thinks differently. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes is simply this: who's going to decide? To whom do you award the right to decide which speech is harmful, or who is the harmful speaker? Or to determine in advance what are the harmful consequences going to be that we know enough about in advance to prevent? To whom would you give this job? To whom are you going to award the task of being the censor? Isn't it a famous old story that the man who has to read all the pornography in order to decide what's fit to be passed and what is fit not to be is the man most likely to become debauched? Did you hear any speaker in the opposition to this motion, eloquent as one of them was, to whom you would delegate the task of deciding for you what you could read? To whom you would give the job of deciding for you, relieve you of the responsibility of hearing what you might have to hear? Do you know anyone? Hands up. Do you know anyone to whom you'd give this job? Does anyone have a nominee? You mean there's no one in Canada good enough to decide what I can read or hear? I had no idea. but there's a law that says there must be such a person, or there's a subsection of some piddling law that says it, well, the hell with that law then. It's inviting you to be liars and hypocrites and to deny what you evidently know already.
Now, I find his position to be virtually unassailable, and I encourage anybody to use their freedom of speech to try and assail it. However, there's more to it than this. It's not just the right of the speaker to speak, and then therefore the right of the audience to listen, which is important. There was more that happened with Mr. Hitchens, because as he was going on his anti-religion and, by proxy, free speech crusade in the late noughts, he was actually engaged at some of his debates by 9/11 truthers. And he infamously, as a proponent of freedom of speech, refused to debate them. Now, there was also just the regular old politeness aspect of it. We're here to debate religion and freedom of speech, and someone shows up saying jet fuel can't melt steel beams. They're trying to steal the spotlight. So he did refuse to give it to them, but people thought it was hypocritical for him as a free speech absolutist like myself to not engage with someone else's speech. And I think that's a wrong view of how freedom of speech works with this right of the audience to listen. The audience has a right to listen. They don't have an absolute necessity to. If the speaker's speech is so inane, so insane that it can be dismissed with, the audience does not have to listen to it. And that's sort of what I want to get to with PD2 eventually. Now, with the audience having this right to listen, I'm going to expand that even further. It's not just the right of the audience to listen. It is, if we're pushing that back onto the speaker, it is the responsibility of the speaker to be well-versed, learned, concise, and have some actual originality to what they're saying. If they don't, well, the audience has no reason to listen. And moreover, the interplay, the exchange of thoughts, the exchange of ideas, the exchange of just free debate doesn't progress. And I believe that truly limits society in a manner that we are not prepared to deal with. We have always operated imperfectly under the idea for at least 100 years now that the free expression of ideas, sometimes evil ones, sometimes bad ones, can flow, and we have consistently progressed forward technologically, sociologically, and if we propose to backtrack on this, or even worse, give up on the idea that there's this interplay between the audience choosing what to listen to and the speaker's responsibility to be eloquent and well-versed, well, things will start to collapse. Let me give you an example. If you could rank, testing your scientific literacy here, the theory of evolution, the theory of gravity, and the theory of climate change by strength of evidence, how would you rank them? Don't put the answer in the comments because I don't want to embarrass anybody. And some scientist can try to contradict me on this if they feel I'm incorrect. But the theory of evolution is actually the strongest of the three. There has never been a shred of evidence whatsoever, any credible evidence, for anybody to ever doubt the theory of evolution. Matter of fact, the evolutionary biologists are the rock stars of the scientific profession, which has been suffering a replication crisis for 30 years now. They can't reproduce most of the results that are found in scientific studies. In certain areas, especially the soft sciences like psychology, or even social psychology, which is a scam profession, the replication errors are over 80 or 90%. That is utterly abhorrent. That is essentially not science at that point. But the theory of evolution is the strongest. Like I said, they could not only no shred of evidence ever existed to make them doubt it, they have consistently made predictions off that theory on where to find fossil records, in what layer, at what depth, in what location. It's that strong. Technically, the next up would be the theory of gravity. There's a bit of a sleight of hand there because the theory of gravity is different from Einstein's theory of relativity, which replaced Newton's theory of gravity, and then quantum theory, which I still don't really understand, but the way some very smart sciencey person at Virginia Tech 15 years ago explained it to me, who did understand it, was, well, relativity doesn't work at the quantum scale. So we know that there are times where gravity doesn't operate the same way Newton said it would, and we know that there are ways that gravity does not operate the same way that Einstein said it would. Apologies. And last on that list is actually the theory of climate change. Give me an example of how the theory of climate change might have some holes in it. I'm not a climate denier, by the way, but that is a slur often thrown out at people who have questions legitimately about the scientific evidence for this. The IPCC, the International Panel for Climate Change, has always backed the main 8 models of climate change, or global warming as it was known. That's why it had to change its name, because the models were wrong, the most infamous of those being the hockey stick graph. Well, of the, I think it's 7, might be 8, 7 or 8 models that exist, the warming that has occurred with really no appreciable change in carbon output, which is another problem. We can't really measure carbon output accurately, but the warming has been below the most conservative of the curves, and has obviously been nowhere near the hockey stick graph, or we would be Venus at this point, or close to it. So, 4 scientists from MIT, 2 geologists and 2 physicists actually sent a letter to the IPCC saying that their models were wrong and they needed to change them. Now, they weren't doing this because they were climate deniers. They were actually doing it because they are climate change advocates, and they were saying that what the IPCC was doing was damaging climate science to the point that nobody was believing it. Nobody was taking the predictions seriously. And the reason 2 physicists and 2 geologists did this is because the models that climate change science is based on are actually geologic models that are used to track plate tectonics. And the people who designed those were physicists, because geologists are not really good at math. So, 4 scientists from MIT who have a background in these models and know what they're talking about sent this letter off. The response from the IPCC, the head of the IPCC, who is a smart man, I'm sure is very well educated, knows his craft inside and out, was, I'm not going to take any advice from 2 geologists and 2 physicists when I'm the head of the IPCC. He quite literally made an appeal to authority, an argument that any philosophy student in a 1,000-level intro course would know how to counter, and he even cited himself as the appeal to authority. That is what breaks down when freedom of speech and the additional social requirements I'm talking about break down. It's not just that the government can't limit what you say. There is an additional responsibility of the audience to choose what to listen to, and an additional requirement for the speaker to be eloquent, well-versed, and prepared. And I believe that those 4 scientists from MIT were. And unfortunately, the audience, the IPCC, did not fulfill their requirement. So I don't broach this topic lightly, is what I should say. Whether or not you believe in climate change doesn't really matter. It's either a global scam that people are trying to rectify and turn into a respectable profession, or it is an existential crisis to humanity that will kill all of us in the next few decades. And the point is, because of the lack of understanding from people at the top about what freedom of speech is, not just this restriction, but this requirement, responsibility of us to practice it fully and with responsibility, well, society is a bit worse off because of it. So, what does this have to do with PD2? Well, of course, I don't want to say the vibe of the season. What I'll say is there's a lot of angry people and a lot of tourists this season, and I have been following the feedback channel actually a little more than I do normally. Most of the feedback in there is not great, but specifically there's been some outrage. We knew this season was going to be a little smaller of a patch, the devs were going to be less involved, but the boss health, for example, on tier 2s is bugged, and it made them incredibly easy, and I'll try to find and post the thing I saw from Canite where he said he doesn't even listen to bossers' feedback. But the general consensus has been anger, and I don't like this, and the game is too easy, and you're not doing this, and you're not doing that, and it's the same kind of syndrome we had where Canite got a little bit one-guyed last season, and but rightfully went after that one guy and basically told him to fuck off. If you guys are going to give feedback on Project Diablo 2 and advocate for changes to the game, I just want you to keep in mind that it is not... First off, you're appealing to an audience that knows what they're doing. The devs know what they're doing. You're all here playing this game. You all love this game. Most of us agree that this dev team is actually the greatest dev team in the world right now. They're at least top 5. Find 4 studios that are doing it better than the unpaid volunteer dev team. I think you could just put Erlen's artwork up, and that would put them as a top 5 team, not to mention everything else they've done with the damn game. But The feedback has to be constructive. It has to be well put together. It has to be well versed. You have to understand that it's not just you and your bossing prowess that needs to be balanced. It is the entire community. It is the need to bring in, unfortunately, yes, the tourists who don't really understand the trade culture this season, which is another problem. But we need them to continue the health of the game, to get new blood in. And again, I'll keep saying it. I've been saying it for years. I'm surprised this game has gone on for 5 years. The more we push, the more inane feedback that is given, the more criticism that is not well grounded, not well researched, not understanding the community at large, is just, in my opinion, putting another nail in the coffin to the day that the devs say that this is on maintenance status. I remember losing Star Wars The Old Republic. I remember the death of Madden. I remember the death of all my favorite video games, and I will do everything in my power, even creating a pretentious video essay, to tell people to sit down, shut up, and fuck off, or do some research and get better speech if it means extending the life of this game. See you guys later.